One of the challenges with professional writing is to develop a good, solid style. When you begin to write professionally, you have to do a lot of editing. You want to trim documents down to their core, out of respect for the reader. You don't want to go on and on and on and on. And so it requires you to do a lot of editing. And so what I'm asking you in the class to do is to start to develop some good habits in terms of professional style, so you don't have to go back and do all that editing all the time. Just kind of think through the kinds of demands that professional writing and professional style brings to the table. There are some central tensions in a good business style or a good professional style, one that's effective here. You want to write for greater clarity and simplicity here. And the challenge with writing in the professional context is you want to make an impression on the reader. You're seeking investment in a new project, and you want the reader to be impressed with you and give you money, right? But instead, the reader will be more impressed if you are clear and offer your ideas with a great sense of simplicity and focus. So you want to refer to clear aspects, situations, and agents within the writing here. You don't want to go on too many tangents, and you want to work within the established forms of professional writing: memos, reports, proposals. You want to utilize the kinds of forms and the parts of those forms that are established, so the reader knows what's expected with each part. Professional writing also demands a level of objectivity and detachment. So sometimes it will seem somewhat impersonal. And this grates a lot on those of us who are creative writers who want to infuse a lot of our own kind of voice within the text. Here, your central purpose though is to inform or persuade, not to impress, not to not to wow in some ways. So you want to be as objective and detached as you can within your style here. It creates a great challenge for the writer. That sometimes professional writing can seem kind of blunt. And you feel like you're not making points of contact. But when you respect the reader, by developing a clear and focused voice and presentation in your writing, that will make contact with the professional reader here. Also, you want to offer direction to the reader through good professional style. And sometimes if you become too chummy or too polite, too falsely polite, or too gratuitous with the reader will recognize that. So instead, show respect for the reader by getting to the point. Don't waste the reader's time by going around and around and around and trying to sound smart. There's a very big difference between a measured formality and good professional style versus the insincerity of poor professional style. So offer direction and get to the point to show respect for your reader. So, for example, which is a more effective sentence in terms of professional style? Would you now please remove the refuse from the domicile and position it in the predetermined receptacles that exist on the property? Versus a simple sentence, take out the garbage, please. The second sentence is more effective, right? Because it offers direction, it gets right to the point. It doesn't try to, candy coat the direction. And so by getting to the point, you show more respect to the reader, and you can even throw in a please if you feel like it sounds too impolite there. So good professional style requires that kind of focusedness and direction here. Before writing, one of the things that this requires is that you take a couple steps to think about the context and purpose of a piece of communication. Context determines form. What kind of form are you going to write in? Should you use a memo where you're trying to give a set of directions to a group within an organization? Are you going to write an email, which is a more informal kind of communication? Should you write a formal letter or a more substantial report, something again that's more formal and is more developed? What is the objective of your communication here? And so all those things kind of play into thinking about form and how purpose and context define that sense of form. Also reconsider your audience here. Are you writing to your boss? Are you writing to a group of people that you manage? Are you writing to potential investors, or someone who's going to fund or okay a proposal that you make? So what subtextual issues are involved within the communication, underneath the communication? What is the impact of your working relationships with others on what you're saying here? Or are there other points of conflict or tension that might be a part of the communication that you're writing here? Think about those things as well as you determine the context and purpose of your communication. So I want to offer you a few, in terms of editing, a few points in creating an effective style. You can kind of start to make these directives within your editing now, or start to kind of think about them as you write, so you don't have to do as much editing afterwards, perhaps. You can call these like the 10 commandments of an effective professional style. So I'm going to go through them point by point. First is be concise. Use focused sentences and cut unnecessary adjectives and adverbs and intensifiers. Words like very and really, those kinds of things need to be cut, at the writing level. If you can start to just stop using those things, then you don't have to go back and edit them out later. Any redundancies that you note within a piece of writing, or any overblown language or indirect constructions, any place where you're trying to sound too smart, and you go on and around the topic. So things like where you use sentences like, of course, what I'm trying to say here is, no, just say it, right? Just get right to the point. Be as concise as you can within the professional context. Number 2, think of and be clear about pronouns antecedents. That is, what do pronouns refer to? A lot of times we throw around pronouns like this, that, these, and those demonstrative pronouns, as well as the personal pronouns it and them, and it's not always clear what those refer to. So sometimes in professional writing you have to repeat the nouns, particularly where you're outlining agency or you're outlining the details of a contract, who's going to perform what actions. So be clear, repeat the nouns if you have to, if it's not clear what the pronouns might refer to. 3 here, know your audience. If you're writing to a group of engineers about a factory process, that might be very different than if you're writing to a general audience. So use precise language here, as best you can, versus trying to sound smart and using a lot of technical jargon that shoots over the audience's head. Know the audience, what they know. One other thing here in terms of the audience is you want to edit for cliche within the text. That's overused, overblown, overworked language. Things that are said all the time. Things like, our approach here is 24/7, or at our company we like to think outside the box. These are overly used phrases and sentences, and so you want to use fresher language. You don't have to invent brand new things, but state things more clearly than the cliche does. Number 4 here, you want to avoid the passive voice and instead use active voice. That is where the subject of the sentence does the action of the verb. This clarifies agency, particularly in contractual kinds of language, or where you're expressing the expectations of a partner in a business relationship. My common example of passive voice that I always use in the class is, a sentence like this: I punch the student in the face. Who does the punching? I is the subject of the sentence. It does the action of the verb, versus a sentence like, the student was punched in the face by me. Where you're using passive voice, right? The student is the one who receives the punching. And so the problem with passive voice is if you use it too often within a piece of writing, it's hard to tell who's doing what, right? Who is performing the actions of these verbs. So for instance here, which of these sentences is more effective? The project was delivered by our team, or our team delivered the project. If you want to take credit, right, the second sentence is more effective perhaps, right, because it underlines your team's participation in delivering the project. And that is an active voice sentence. So try to use active voice as best you can. One note here, right, that scientists in their writing, in their reports, will use passive voice instead. which is what the style demands in scientific writing. But in good professional writing, you want to try to use active voice whenever you can. Develop coherence within your writing by engaging the reader's thought process as much as you can. You want to link ideas through pattern organization, and to kind of anticipate how the reader is going to take in your ideas. So some sample patterns of organization here. We'll work through these more in terms of assignments later in the course. You define a problem and then offer a solution or bits of solution. You follow chronological order. First this happened, then this happened, then this will happen. You can follow spatial order. If you're taking an object apart or you're walking through a space, you can work from the inside to the outside, to the outside to the inside. You can think about the spatial order of the object or space. You can build points of comparison. If you're comparing two approaches in a situation or problem, or you can treat things in order of importance, and that's one of those that's used most often in professional writing. This is the most important thing about this. This is the second, and this would be the least important thing. So think about patterns of organization when you're breaking material down in a good professional style. You want to use subordination to give ideas their appropriate weight. One of the things that happens in professional writing is that sometimes it can seem kind of choppy, where the sentences all go subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object. If you use sort of subordination, where you use words like since, while, if, and when to kind of show relationships between events or ideas, you can start to link those sentences up and connect them logically. So an example here would be, their ideas are not clear because there are no detailed costs. That could be two separate sentences. Their ideas are not clear, period. There are no detailed costs. But you can link them through that because. You can link them logically here, right? To build a stronger connection for the reader and how the reader understands, why the ideas aren't clear. Well, there are no detailed costs. And so use subordination to link ideas when that's possible. You want to replace the indicative mood, that is a simple statement, with imperative mood, a command, when you can. This can seem a little blunt at times, right? A little too directive perhaps, but what it does is it shows the reader respect by offering direction. If it feels too impolite, throw a please in there. But you want the reader to be clear about what the responsibilities are that you're giving. And so here are a couple of examples. Employees should carefully read the handbook, or please read the handbook. The second sentence is a command, but it's more directive and it's a little more forceful. And so it's more effective in terms of professional style. Don't be afraid to offer commands. Again, if you feel like it's impolite, just throw a please in there. Use clear formatting of the text. Professional style asks that you use block paragraphs. Don't indent paragraphs. Instead, use block style. When you go to a new paragraph, you don't indent. You just skip a line between the paragraphs. You see this in email all the time, right? So use block paragraphing for all the assignments in this course. I'll ask you to do that. And don't confuse gratuitousness with politeness. So that is, gratuitousness is false politeness, or kind of smarminess, or chumminess. Show the reader respect with a little bit of distance in some ways, right? Sometimes you might feel like you're being too direct with the reader, or too detached from the reader, but the reader will respect that much more than when you seem too insincere or falsely polite. And finally, 10 here, reconsider the subjects of sentences carefully in your writing. Reconsider agency and the reader's level of expertise in choosing a subject for each sentence. When you're introducing a new subject to the reader, you should always give them, in the opening part of a sentence, information they might already know from what you've written. Don't introduce a new idea as a subject sometimes. And also, you can utilize the second person you in professional writing. You can't really in academic writing, or you're discouraged from it in academic writing, but you is okay within professional writing. So here's a couple of examples. One should be responsible for submitting the order, or you are responsible for submitting the order. The second one is more effective here because it offers clearer direction and emphasizes emphasizes its point. It's very directive.